Episode 3 of Build Breakdown. Still haven't figured out if that's what we're calling it. I just filmed the last 2 episodes. Haven't looked at them, haven't edited them. We will see. Anyways, episode 3, GTR parts, knuckles, brakes, axles, diffs. The obvious question is, why are we going with GTR parts? Pretty basic. They are some of the best all-wheel drive cars in the world. Very high performance. They can hold a lot of power stock, which we will be putting a lot of power to this car. And since they are obviously already all-wheel drive, we can just take the front all-wheel drive system, adapt it to our car, versus some other all-wheel drive cars out there have taken rear diffs and flipped them backwards and made custom axles and brackets and stuff. Didn't want to do that. They also have a very unique transfer case. I wouldn't say unique, they're not the only ones that do it. The transfer case that the GTRs use is hydraulically driven, and there's like clutch packs in there, kind of similar to like a motorcycle clutch, but that's not always hydraulic. Basically, you put a bunch of hydraulic pressure to it, it clamps the clutches, and you have all-wheel drive to the front. The reason we wanted to go with that was because if we do drifting in this car, which it probably mostly will be used for, we wanted to be able to use a handbrake and have a handbrake cutoff, which you can't do really all that well with a gear-driven transfer case. Now, that is a whole episode in itself. There will be one of these episodes on that transmission and why we went with that, but just to come all together, that's why we chose a GTR in the first place. One of the coolest parts about the GTR knuckles is honestly this piece. It looks like nothing, but I think it's really cool. Like I showed in the last episode about the control arms, this is how the ball joint mounts. So there's basically this little recess area. There's this little hole right there which helps center it and keep it in place, and then it just bolts on. While we could have used the ball joint, it wasn't really the best option, because when you have a ball joint and a heim joint together, which is what's on the end of the control arm, they kind of fight each other. Once you bolt it down, I'm sure it gets a little bit better, but you really just want to have one point of articulation just to have as much control as possible. So with the ball joint and the heim joint connected to each other, it was a little bit wobbly, and so that's where I came up with this. Now this has that same recess to center it, and then, you know, 2 bolt holes, and then it has a little hexagon in the middle to capture the top of the bolt. Just like some of the other episodes of the breakdown stuff, you guys have seen these parts before in some of the other episodes, but just another look again. That's how it fits on, just like the ball joint, but gives you a spot to have this bolt going through for the lower control arm. Now, one little fun caveat of these knuckles is I think on these, the steering pickup point is actually sits on the rear of the wheel, on the back side of the subframe. Our steering will not work like that. We have to use the Mustang steering rack, which mounts on the front of the K-member. So funny enough, which I don't think it'll matter at all, our knuckles are actually gonna be on the opposite side of the car. So the right side knuckle for a GTR is gonna be on the left side of our car. Doesn't matter, I just thought that was a fun fact. I'll also throw some 3D models up on the screen right now, if I remember, of the spacer that's inside the top of the knuckle that you guys have maybe only seen once, and then the bottom adapter piece. Now, they're nothing fancy, but they do the job and they work. I'm sure they might go through a couple more iterations before the final piece gets made of metal, but that's what we have for now. Now, in terms of the axles and the diff, they are nothing special. They are just what comes with the GTRs. They work with the knuckles, all of it works together. That's just what we're using. Now, another reason that we have gone with GTR stuff is because this front diff is significantly smaller than anything you could get where you would do like a rear diff flipped backwards. The obvious reason for that being, it came from an all-wheel drive car, the engine's up there with it, you have to package them as small as possible. We are going to have to buy a LSD diff for the front. Right now it's just an open diff, which is fine for what the GTR is needed, but for what we want, we don't want to just have power going to one wheel. So we will be having to swap that out, but that should be pretty simple. They have kits out there for that. I think that's all the information I have about the GTR parts. Again, that was kind of just the stuff that looked like it would work the most. They hold a ton of power. The knuckles seem like they would adapt to the control arms we wanted. We could have found a smaller packaged, you know, all-wheel drive car. There's some like random, just like everyday sedans out there that have all-wheel drive, but again, they don't hold a ton of power, and knowing what we're going to be putting at this thing, we will have to upgrade some of these parts in the future. Like the axles will probably snap at some point, but from stock they will be more than plenty. Hopefully that answers any questions about the GTR parts you guys had. If I missed anything, if you guys had any more questions, put them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. This is pretty much where we're at. We have GTR parts, we have some Mustang parts on the front. We're working at it. As we move to the interior of the car, there will be more of these videos, and we'll film these ahead of time. I'm kind of going back and explaining what we've done already, but we will kind of film them as I am working on them, as I'm 3D modeling, and as we're doing the CNC and stuff. There will be more of these videos to come.